The 2024-2025 San Jose Sharks season kicks off today. What are the big themes for the season that I am watching for?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker of the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can subscribe on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be discussing the big themes, storylines, stuff that we're going to be kind of tracking all season, kind of the things that matter for this season. I think to be kind of considered a successful season for the San Jose Sharks. So we're going to be talking, of course, about the player development, mainly Celebrini and Smith, plus the other young players, Warsofsky's changes to the structure and the culture of the team, and how does Mike Grier navigate being trying to be competitive while also still planning for the future. And by competitive, heavy quotations around that, like competitive. So before we get to all that, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So, theme number one, storyline number one, stuff number one. Of course, this season is very much about the development and continued development for other players, but Celebrini and Smith, right, are in the forefront for this season, right? Both of them are making their NHL debuts on Thursday night versus St. Louis Blues, and this season, very much, we want to see how these young players develop, right? And we've talked about it before, and I will bring up the as a dad, right? The comparing your kid analogy of you sometimes you have to, it's hard to do, but you have to not compare the kids, right? Everyone has their own timeline and development curves and development paths and things that they do well and things that they need some extra help on. And it's going to be very easy, myself included, to do this, to compare how Celebrini is playing against Will Smith, how Will Smith's playing against Celebrini, how Celebrini did compare against, guys like Connor Bedard or Fantilli or Leo Carlson in their full rookie seasons. And how are they comparing against Michkov? And it's very easy to compare and try to say, well, he does this better, he does that better. We have to let them kind of develop at their own natural pace. So I think the Sharks have done a good job at adding pieces around them to, again, make this a more competitive team. Heavy air quotes. Most of us going into this season realize this team is still going to be a bottom 5 team in the NHL. But that's the goal is this season is not repeat what we saw last year with the just constant shellackings and the losing, and just be a more competitive team night in and night out. And that's not to say they're not going to have their fair share of 6-1 type losses. It's just we want to see this team play at a higher competitive level, and Celebrini and Smith will help with that. Guys like Tyler Toffoli, Alex Wenberg, Wallman, all these other guys that they brought in again to help kind of raise the talent level on this team and to help insulate the young players. I fully expect that. So how do Celebrini and Smith kind of go through the wear and tear of a first season, the ups and downs, right? How do you deal with the highs when Celebrini scores his first game-winning goal or scores in overtime or stuff like that? And how do you deal with the lows where, you just kind of get your butt kicked for an entire night, and everything that can go wrong goes wrong? How do you respond to those moments? So I think that is a big thing this season is Celebrini and Smith. How do they navigate that first season? Some of the other players, right? William Eklund, he went through that last year, right? plenty of ups, plenty of downs, navigating through that. Now you've done that, can you be a more consistent player, right? Minimize the lows where you're not dealing with those types of issues night in, night out, and establish yourself and have that breakout season that we've all been kind of, waiting for since draft day, and be that player that we expect you to be, and be a consistent every night, every time you step on the ice. You're kind of being that player, and solidifying yourself as a top 6 piece for this team, if not a top line piece for this team going forward, as they continue to add more and more high-end prospects and players and stuff. I think for Eklund, that's kind of the big theme, goal, storyline for the season, is that consistency level, and I thought he was, at the end of the season, I thought he played really, really well. We saw him kind of consistently night in, night out, kind of playing some of his best hockey, but he did have slumps, and he did have those times where, he maybe looked a little lost and dealing with, again, a very bad team, but just dealing kind of with some of that rookie stuff, and maybe not having as many of those guys to lean on last year that I think he will this year, especially again with some of the additions. Young guys like Henry Thrun, can you really establish yourself as an every night player and kind of solidify what your role is going to be for this team? Shakir Mukhamadullin, right? Can you become an everyday NHL player? Bordelot, Gushing, can these guys crack the lineup? Can these guys kind of carve out their roles and what they're expected to do? So I think this year's a big year for the Sharks and their development, especially because I think, again, last year, and we'll continue to talk about last year, we knew what that team was, right? That team was built to fail, and fail on purpose. But now, you've added a lot of pieces, you've added a new system. How do you make sure that you're not ruining prospects by putting them in a position to fail? And then, of course, the big one, right? Askarov. How does his development go? Whether it's in the AHL, which we kind of expect him to be there for the majority of the season, but when he does get those NHL chances, which I think he will get his NHL chances, how does he utilize those opportunities, and can he show that growth and development, that maturity that we've heard about of him? Maybe when the spotlight gets a little bit bigger, if he's kind of able to handle that, or if things don't go his way, can he deal with that adversity? So that's a big thing for him. Is we've seen the on ice play, him be spectacular at times, playing for Milwaukee, and we're gonna hopefully soon get to see that in San Jose. But can you, again, consistency every night player, and how do you kind of rein those type of, when things go wrong off the rails, how do you kind of rein those in? So I think this year's a big year for development. We have to move forward, making sure that the players that are here are the right players that are going to be here. We're putting them in a right position to succeed. We're utilizing them to the best of their strengths. And I think Ryan Warsofsky, who we'll talk about here in a second, is going to be, we'll talk about his changes and everything that he's going to, hopefully do. But the development piece is the biggest thing, because it's great to draft the top 5 picks all the time, but you got to do something with them, and you got to make sure that they develop correctly, or else you're going to end up like the next Sabres, where you're just kind of wandering the desert, the NHL desert, proverbial NHL desert, for 10 years, as you try to kind of figure out what you are and who's part of your core. And as guys age out of your core, then you have to replace those guys, but you still haven't done anything in that time. So I think for the Sharks this season, very much process over results, but that development piece for them is, are they learning how to try to win? Are they learning how to be a professional player? Are they being consistent night in, night out? How do they respond from those adversity? I think that's the first theme and storyline I don't know. I can't decide. I like theme a little bit more, but anyway, that's the first thing I think for this season to be considered a success is, can these guys show that development, getting better? Can we by the end of the season are we going to say like Celebrini and Smith are the guys? We know these are 1, 2. These are going to be our guys for the next 15 years. Hopefully, not have any questions. We know what William Eklund is going to be. Can Askarov prove that he's ready to be an NHL player? Can Henry Thrun prove that he's a every night defenseman? And Shakir Mukhamadullin, can he be an every night NHL top 4 defenseman? So, big questions that we're going to be tracking kind of all season. So, we will get to Ryan Warsofsky and what he can do to help turn this thing around, raise the Titanic, whatever analogy you want to use. We'll get to that here in just 1 second. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I know my beloved Dolphins aren't playing this week, and I keep telling you to take the under on the Dolphins until Tua gets back, but I do like the Jets and the dead cat bounce that you get when you typically fire a coach. I think we see the Jets play well, and then I think we see them crater for the rest of the season because I just don't believe in that team. So if you feel that same way, you can put $5 down, and then you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, no matter if you win or lose. So you can do all that over at FanDuel.com. All right, before we talk about Ryan Warsofsky, do want to, of course, thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And when you're done checking out this show, there's plenty of great shows to check out. You've got Locked On Fantasy Hockey. So if you want to, you're already scrambling about your team, maybe you're dealing with some injuries, maybe you just don't like the team that you drafted. How often do we walk out of the draft and say, I hate my team? Locked On Fantasy Hockey will help you manage the waiver wire, who to pick up, who to drop, all that stuff. Or you can check out one of the shows here in the Bay Area, right? You got Locked On Warriors as preseason starting, Locked On Niners with their Thursday night game. So maybe as soon as you're done, you're going to have Thursday night football, Sharks back to back, plenty of stuff there. Locked On A's, Locked On Giants, plenty of great stuff here at the Locked On Network, wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. So, Ryan Warsofsky hired this summer to help change the culture. I think that's a big thing first, right? And we've heard from everybody. Warsofsky, Mike Grier, Zetterlund, Mario Ferraro. We've heard everybody who's been asked about it. Like, how do you get over last year, which was one of the worst seasons in modern NHL history? How do you turn the page on that? And I think Ryan Warsofsky, even though he was here last year, I think a fresh voice, a new approach is going to be huge in that, right? And he's saying all the right things now, right? We have to know what we did last year, what we went through, but we can't let that happen again. And I think for him, it's going to be important to continue to kind of hammer home that message, but be positive, right? You have so many young players on this team, right? Smith and Celebrini, both under 20. Eklund, who's played a season, right? Thrun, who's played a full season. Guys like Shakir Mukhamadullin, who's going to be making his rookie season. Like Gushin, who's played a handful of games and has only known losing, right? Go look at all the teams Gushin's played for, basically, since he was drafted. Like the Ice Dogs were garbage. He's played on some bad Barracuda teams. Like this dude has only played on bad teams. How do you keep positive with these young guys, try to keep morale up, and continue to build, even if you're not getting the results? And I think for Warsofsky, there's going to be challenges this year. Like what happens when you lose 3 in a row, or you lose 5 out of 7 or something like that? Like, how do you go through those streaks and navigate those streaks and kind of get everyone on the same page and working towards the same goal? And I think for Warsofsky, even though he's never been an NHL coach, the dude's been coaching for a long time in the ECHL, in the AHL. He's coached the last 2 seasons as, like a associate or a assistant coach in the NHL. He knows a lot of these guys. And I think for him, the good thing is he's going to be able to transition in and be able to, know when to push some buttons because he knows a lot of these guys. And yes, I know there's a lot of new pieces, but how do you try to build a winning culture out of the ashes that was last season for Warsofsky? And also, how do you navigate being a rookie head coach in the NHL? For Warsofsky, like I mentioned, he's been a coach for a long time, but still, right? It is his first run through the NHL, playing a full 82 game season and dealing with, you have extremely hyped prospect in Macklin Celebrini. You have Will Smith, both these guys going through their first seasons. You have a lot of kind of scarred tissue from last season that you're going to have to kind of pick the open, kind of open those wounds and deal with those to let things heal. I think for what it's a big challenge for Warsofsky to kind of come in and deal with all this. And that's going to be one of the things I watch is how is this team playing kind of now? You expect them to come out and play well, right? But there's going to be some learning curves as they're, implementing new systems. You have a lot of new guys trying to build chemistry. You look at, like, there's no lines that we had last year that are really brought in this year. Like, all the lines are different. There's new players and new faces and new positions, kind of trying to feel things out. So how does this team go from, now until like Thanksgiving? How are they improving night in and night out? How about, and then that time from Thanksgiving to, kind of the new year when things are kind of settled, you're in the grind of the daily, but are you continuing to get better? Are you seeing players get better? Are you making adjustments to guys maybe don't fit certain roles? Guys, as they're ready to kind of try new roles, how are you kind of fitting that? And then the end of the season, right, when we'll talk about here in a minute, but you project and you expect to lose guys. How have you prepared younger guys to kind of step up and take the places of guys who get traded or guys who get hurt? And how do you deal with that attrition? I think those are kind of the big things around Warsofsky, all while trying to instill a new culture, wash away the filth that was last year, and try to get this team ready to be a competitive team over the next couple of seasons. So I think Warsofsky's got a big challenge ahead, and this isn't going to be something that just happens overnight. But I still think he's the right guy because I think of his path, the types of players he's coached previously, how he's been a winner kind of wherever he's gone. And I think he's going to be the right guy. And you kind of hear already just kind of coming out of training camp, just the vibes out of training camp, right? It was a very tough training camp from every player you heard. One of the tough training camp, worked hard, but it seems like the team is ready to move forward and kind of from last year, right? Especially the players who were here last year and ready to kind of start something new and start something fresh. So I think so far so good. I actually really like to hear the tough training camp, especially with all the young players, and to let these guys try to figure this thing out and try to kind of start a new chapter in Sharks history. So I think that's theme story number 2 I'm going to be watching this year is how does Ryan Warsofsky navigate all this? Because this is a lot to do. So we'll talk kind of bigger picture stuff here with Mike Grier and how does he navigate the balance of trying to be a competitive team night in, night out, but also thinking long-term about what's best for this organization and if trading veterans away or kind of who stays and who goes. So we'll talk about that here in just 1 second. If you want to get tickets to the Tank to go see the Sharks, maybe you want to go catch a Warriors game, Niners game, concert, whatever it is you want to go see and you need tickets for, you need to check out Game Time. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With the app, they have a customize your spot, so you can actually see what kind of inspires you for your seats. Are you looking for something kind of close, far away, in our price range? They've curated deals that make it easy to find the best prices on seats. You can view your seats before you buy. So check out Game Time. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON, NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, guys, let's get to the third kind of big story theme. I don't know, man. Mike Grier, and how do you navigate this season, right? Because we know he tore this thing down to the studs, and is working to build things back up. But the Sharks, again, we don't expect them to be the most competitive team, at least in the standings. I think they're going to play hard night in, night out. I think you're going to see a more competitive team on the ice. I still think there's just a big talent deficit. But how do you navigate for San Jose the look to the future? Because again, right, we want to build sustainable success. We want to build a team that is going to have a long competitive window. If it's 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever years, you want to build that next team where it's like, we got to run through the Sharks. Kind of like how the Avs are, or Dallas, or Vegas, or we want to be that team next. Like where it's just, you don't want to be the flash in the pan. You make the playoffs and then you fall apart team. You want to be that team that continually builds and is going to be a playoff contender for, a huge chunk of time. So for Mike Grier, who, again, his job is to continue to look forward and how do we make sure that we're in the best position to succeed. But I don't think he wants to, again, rip this team down like we saw, last year. So I think for Mike Grier, it's how do you navigate making sure this team is competitive night in and night out by keeping some of these veteran guys around. And we know guys like Tyler Toffoli, he's going to be here for the next 4 seasons, right? Signed a 4-year deal, is going to be here, is signed up to kind of be here to help start this process, right? Alex Lindbergh signed for the next 2 seasons, but you got plenty of, I think, pieces that are going to be guys that I think are movable, or not only movable, but I think teams will be looking at adding because I think they kind of fit what a lot of teams are looking for. A guy like Mikael Granlund, who on most teams is probably more of a middle 6, third line type of guy, but we've seen his playmaking ability. He's solid defensively. Like, he is a type of player I think teams will be looking to add last year of his deal. Luke Cunnin, hard, kind of heavy game, hard to play against, has a little bit of a scoring touch, willing to stick up, like play his penalty kill, a guy that a lot of teams would love to have on their fourth line. Same thing with Nico Sturm, penalty killing ace, like amazing in the faceoff dot. Another guy, like, we know what happens if you start kind of peeling and taking these players away. You definitely, as much as we have complained about like Luke Cunnin on this podcast, or your Barclay Goodrow, etc. Like these guys do have a role, right? And they do play meaningful minutes on the bottom 6, and like they are important aspects to winning hockey. So what happens if you start taking these pieces away, and how many pieces do you kind of take away before the whole Jenga tower falls? I think is going to be the balance that Mike Grier plays. Like, you also don't want to not take advantage of your assets. And, if a guy like Luke Cunnin or Mikael Granlund, who are both unrestricted free agents, if they want to leave this offseason and go play winning hockey somewhere else, that is within their rights, right? Especially if they've kind of suffered through the past couple seasons. Like, they probably want to go play playoff hockey at some point. How do you balance trying to get as much as you can for these guys, but also not tearing down this team, and making sure that you're still playing competitive hockey till the end of the season. I think that's a big goal for the Sharks again, at least to just be a competitive team night in, night out. That doesn't mean win every game, doesn't mean make the playoffs. Just make teams work for their wins, and same thing on the blue line, right? You have Cody Ceci, and who the Sharks, went out and acquired this offseason. Jan Ruda, who was part of the Erik Karlsson deal last season. Both these guys are, kind of maybe their bottom, third pairing defenseman on a championship caliber team. But teams are always looking to kind of upgrade those slots, and those are going to be valuable players. And what about Mario Ferraro, who the Sharks have, it's not a secret that Sharks have made available Mario Ferraro, who's been very much a heart and soul type of player. But if the Sharks get a good enough offer, they're going to be willing to move him, especially if you look at the trade deadline this year, right? He's going to have one more year on his deal after this. He's probably going to want a big raise. And that's a discussion for another day, but there's going to be a lot of thinking, and do we have enough guys to continue to fill these roles without also killing our depth, especially on what we expect to be a competitive, or hopefully a competitive Barracuda team. Then you're not kind of ransacking that team that you expect to make a playoff run. I think there's going to be a really, really fine line and fine balance for Mike Grier to try to get the best that he can, continue to gather assets for this team, but also leave them in a good spot so you're not kind of dealing with guys, your Luke Cunnin playing your second line center type of situations. Not that I expect that, and I think this team is much better equipped to kind of deal with some of this attrition. But I do want to see how Mike Grier, we know he's been very, I don't want to say cutthroat, but he's been very cold and calculating, which is that's what you want, right, from a GM. You want the GM to be able to make some tough decisions, and I think that he is going to have to make some tough decisions here, and we'll see if he makes how much he's willing to kind of sell off in the sake of trying to add new pieces, whether it's prospects or picks, and how much he wants to kind of let these kids grow and continue to develop and add to the foundation. So we'll be back after the Blues game as the Sharks host St. Louis Blues in their season opener. I'm excited. This is the most excited I've been for a Sharks season since I've started this podcast. Again, I'm not expecting them to go out and win a bunch of games, but you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel and what this rebuild is going to turn into. And I think this year's going to be a really fun year where, again, maybe not the most wins, but I think there's going to be something fun to talk about every game. What did Celebrini do? What did Smith do? What did Eklund do? What did Zetterlund do? What do these young guys do as the season goes on? And that's going to be fun to track. So make sure you are following along wherever you get podcasts, and subscribe on YouTube as well. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We made it through the summer, guys. Hockey season is here for real. You can also follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter. Of course, if you're not following, I do clips and all that fun stuff of the game. So plenty of good stuff. So we'll be back after the game to hopefully talk about a Sharks win. I do have the Sharks winning tonight. As weird as it sounds, I think the Sharks are going to win tonight. I've 4-2. Give me that. I think the Sharks win 4-2 tonight against the Blues. So until tomorrow, bye, friends.